supposed to do if they couldn't get an abortion? You know, what did I think was the right thing? And I told her, listen, I don't have any opinions about what they should do, but you're breaking the law. That's all I know. And that's why I'm here. So we arrested everybody.
I remember being handcuffed to somebody, and we were all taken down to women's lockup.
We were charged with 11 counts of abortion and conspiracy to commit abortion.
I remember thinking at the time, I can see both sides of this. It's a tough issue. You know, on my side is I don't want to see a life destroyed. That life is helpless. It has no choice in this. And that angers me. On the other hand, I've never been pregnant.
This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases...
6 months after the arrests, the Supreme Court decided Roe versus Wade.
The first 3 months...
And ultimately, the charges that have been brought against Jane are dropped.
Anti-abortion laws of 46 states were rendered unconstitutional.
Roe v. Wade brought an end to Jane because now there were legal providers. But the controversy didn't just disappear.
Perhaps more than any other issue in American life today, the abortion question is loaded with the emotional arguments of life, death, and morality. Not the kinds of issues a court can finally settle.
Roe v. Wade made such an enormous difference. It was a very important victory. At that point, we all kind of scattered, went on to other things. I mean, we really thought the fact that it was legal would change things, that this wouldn't be as political anymore, that it would fade a lot as any kind of a social issue. But we were wrong. We were wrong.
Jane performed approximately 11,000 first and second trimester abortions before Roe versus Wade. No deaths of women were ever reported in connection with the service.
This story was produced by Nellie Gillis with Joe Richmond and Sarah Kate Kramer. It was edited by Deborah George and Ben Shapiro. A special thank you to Laura Kaplan, author of The Story of Jane. You can hear this story and more on the Radio Diaries podcast.
And elsewhere in the show, we will hear more about the current debate around abortion. Thousands of anti-abortion rights activists came to Washington today for the annual March for Life. It's been held every year since the Supreme Court's decision in 1973. President Trump delivered a speech to the crowd on video. Some protesters held signs that said, "Make America pro-life again."
It's All Things Considered on WNYC. Coming up next, a conversation with the Wall Street Journal reporter Michael Rothfeld, who wrote the story about President Trump's alleged affair with adult film star Stephanie Clifford back in 2006. Now, both parties have denied the affair, but the Journal says Clifford, who also goes by the name Stormy Waters, was paid $130,000 by attorneys for Trump to keep silent. The conversation with Rothfeld is next. Stay tuned.
We've heard the Me Too movement loud and clear. Now, how do we transform awareness into meaningful change? Join WNYC for a national conversation where we explore how workplace culture can evolve, punishments that fit the crimes, and greater responsibility from men. Beyond Me Too, Women, Men, Power, and Change. Beginning Monday night at 8 on WNYC.
WNYC supporters include Focus Features presenting Darkest Hour, starring Gary Oldman as Prime Minister Winston Churchill as Germany closes in on Britain in World War II, now playing in theaters everywhere.
Tonight it will be mostly clear. We'll have a low around 33 degrees, and sunny and breezy tomorrow, Saturday, with highs in the low 50s. Sunny on Sunday to round out the weekend with highs in the upper 40s. And next week we'll have a rainy start to the week. Monday rain with lows around 40, and rain on Tuesday before 3 o'clock. Highs go in the mid to upper 50s on Tuesday. Currently 37 degrees, mostly clear skies over Central Park.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Kelly McEvers.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. The Wall Street Journal is out with new details on money reportedly paid by the president's lawyer to a private company in Delaware. Money that was then channeled to an adult film actress. The actress is Stephanie Clifford. She acts under the name Stormy Daniels. The payment was for $130,000. And according to the Journal, it was hush money to stop Clifford from talking about an alleged affair with Trump before he was president. Michael Rothfeld is one of the reporters who broke this story, and he joins me now from the Wall Street Journal newsroom. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. I want to establish a couple points up first. One, both Daniels and the White House deny there ever was a relationship, and we will return to that. But the second thing, just to get out up front, is the timing here. The alleged affair occurred in 2006. The payment, according to your reporting, was in October 2016. So, in other words, right before the election, correct?
That's right.
And what details have you learned about how that payment was made?
Well, what we've learned is that the president's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, created a Delaware limited liability company, and that he opened a bank account for that company and put funds in there, and then sent those funds to the bank account in Los Angeles of Stormy Daniels, or her real name is Stephanie Clifford, her attorney, and he then transferred money to her.
Is it unusual to establish an LLC in a situation like this?
It's not unusual. It's not really necessary unless you perhaps want to distance yourself from the legal settlement. It's something that people do to maintain privacy or secrecy, and because, you know, the bank account is not in the name of the person who is sending the money, so the bank will not know the identity of who's sending the money, and anyone else who has records of the transaction isn't going to know that. The only way that we found out is by pulling the papers for that LLC so we could see Michael Cohen's name on it.
Does Michael Cohen deny the payment, or does the White House more generally?
Neither of them have denied or confirmed that there was a settlement payment. They have both denied the affair, as you mentioned.
Which presents an unusual situation for you as a reporter, reporting on an alleged affair that, as we mentioned, both parties to this alleged affair have denied. How sure are you that it happened?
Well, we're quite sure that there was a settlement payment. However, as far as what happened between Stephanie Clifford and Donald Trump, only the two of them know. However, despite her denial, she has told several people that we've spoken to that there was such an affair. And since we reported this last week, 4 or 5 media outlets have said that she approached them in 2016 when there was a lot of news about women coming forward and making allegations about inappropriate sexual behavior by Donald Trump. And she wanted to tell her story then. At the same time, she was negotiating with Trump's lawyer for this non-disclosure agreement.
This affair, if it occurred, was A, between two consenting adults, and B, took place a decade before Donald Trump was elected president and took public office. Why is it newsworthy?
Well, what we're interested in isn't so much the affair, if it took place. What we're interested in is the hush money. Basically, the idea that there was information about Trump that might have come out before the election at a time when it was revealed that he had made remarks on tape to Access Hollywood that were never aired, but were later revealed about groping women. And that there was this additional information about his relationship, an extramarital relationship, allegedly, with a porn star, and that someone very close to him paid to keep that from the public just weeks before the election. That to us it's not the issue itself. It's the cover-up, basically.
Michael Rothfeld, thank you.
Thank you.
That's Michael Rothfeld of the Wall Street Journal.
At the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, people cannot get away from the issue of sexual harassment. It's the first festival post-Harvey Weinstein, and Sundance founder Robert Redford kicked off this year's event by acknowledging the elephant in the room.
Well, I think Harvey Weinstein was like a moment in time, and I think that we're going to move past that. I don't think he's going to stop the show.
NPR's Mandalit Del Barco is at Sundance, and she's with us now to talk about what's going on. Hey there.
Hey, Kelly.
Robert Redford's usually a pretty, measured, tactful person. I mean, just hearing what we just heard sounds like pretty strong words. How has the festival dealt with the Harvey Weinstein issue, especially given that one of the more horrifying allegations against him is that he raped Rose McGowan at that festival?
Well, the first question at the press conference opening the festival was if Sundance somehow enabled Harvey Weinstein. And Carrie Putnam, who heads the Sundance Institute, she said they weren't aware at the time of what happened. And she said they're sickened by the allegations. That was her words. And, they announced that Utah's Attorney General's office now has a 24-hour hotline for people to report sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
And Sundance has created a code of conduct that says that they can revoke credentials or access to any event to anybody who harasses, discriminates, threatens, or engages in somehow disrespectful behavior.
I'm thinking about the films, too, of course. We should talk about the films, right?
Right.
Last year, the ones that broke out are, big films now. The Big Sick, Call Me By Your Name, Get Out. So what are the big ones this year?
Well, Sundance is known for its strong documentaries, and one of them is about Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And Kelly, NPR's own Nina Totenberg will be interviewing her here at a small venue, and that's a really hot ticket.
Nice.
But there are also other documentaries about Joan Jett and rapper MIA and Jane Fonda and civil rights attorney Gloria Allred, who's been representing many of those women who accused Harvey Weinstein and comedian Bill Cosby and Roy Moore of sexual harassment and rape. And on Saturday, Allred and Fonda are scheduled to speak at a rally on the anniversary of the Women's March. It's also the anniversary of Trump's inauguration, and there's one film called Our New President, which is the story of the last election told through the eyes of Russian media, propaganda, and people who live there. Another documentary is called Dark Money. It's about the impact of contributions by Citizens United on Montana's politics. And also, I heard that there's a 7-minute film that's footage of a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden in 1939 that's supposed to have very eerie parallels to today.
Wow, I mean, Nazis and coverage of the election. It sounds like a lot of documentaries related to the news. What are some of the, feature films that people are getting into?
Well, last night I went to a premiere of Blind Spotting, which is a movie set in my hometown, Oakland, California.
All right.
It was co-written and it stars Daveed Diggs from Hamilton. There's another movie about Oakland from musician Boots Riley. And people are talking about a documentary about Mr. Rogers. There are 2 films about skateboarding and a film from Gus Van Sant called Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot with Joaquin Phoenix and Jonah Hill.
NPR arts correspondent Mandalit Del Barco in Park City, Utah. Thanks so much and have fun.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're listening to All Things Considered on WNYC. Stay tuned for another hour of the program. And later tonight on the media, we'll kick off WNYC's Friday evening lineup at 8 by looking at why recent accusations of sexual misconduct have led some to claim that the Me Too movement has gone too far. Then on a special presentation of the debate show Intelligence Squared, Howard Dean, David Brooks, Melissa Harris Perry, and Robert George will take sides over whether conservative or liberal philosophies lead to more just outcomes. It's our Friday evening lineup, and it starts tonight at 8 on 93.9 FM WNYC. And tonight it will be mostly clear. We'll have a low around 33 degrees. Tomorrow, Saturday, sunny and breezy with a high in the low 50s. Currently, it's 37 degrees and mostly clear skies over Central Park at 5 o'clock.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Subaru, committed to doing its part to make the world a better place by supporting philanthropic initiatives in local communities. Learn more at Subaru.com/lovepromise. Love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru. Stars, presenting the original series Counterpart, a conspiracy thriller starring J.K. Simmons. Counterpart premieres Sunday, January 21st at 8 p.m. on Stars and on the Stars app. And the School of the New York Times, a 2-week summer academy for high school students who want to live and learn in New York while studying with Times journalists. Application information at nytedu.com.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York.
The White House says it doesn't want a government shutdown, but it's still unclear whether there is enough consensus in Congress to get a deal done before midnight. I'm Jamie Floyd. This is All Things Considered on WNYC. The White House budget director says it will be Democratic leadership's fault if the government shuts down.
We don't want this. We do not want a shutdown. But if Mr. Schumer insists on it, he is in a position to force this on the American people.
Complete coverage just ahead. Plus, Donald Trump today became the first president to address the March for Life via satellite from the White House. And yes, the government could shut down at midnight, but what does that really mean for us down here on the ground? We'll find out after news headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer met with President Trump at the White House today in an effort to avoid a possible partial government shutdown tonight. Schumer says some progress was made, but a good number of disagreements remain. Democrats want legislation to protect around 700,000 people brought to the U.S. illegally as children. But the short-term funding bill passed by the House yesterday doesn't include that. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he has confidence in Trump.
Negotiations are complicated. These are emotional issues, but I think we're inside the 10-yard line, and we can't get there without the president. And I hope he gets us into the end zone.
Meanwhile, after saying they would leave town, House GOP leaders now say they are asking members to stay in Washington. Federal prosecutors say they will retry Senator Bob Menendez on corruption charges. Joe Hernandez from member station WHYY reports Menendez and a Florida eye doctor were accused of trading lavish gifts and trips for political favors in a bribery scheme that lasted years.
Menendez and ophthalmologist Salomon Melgen both pleaded not guilty, claiming they were just old friends. Their 11-week trial last fall ended when the federal jury in Newark failed to reach a verdict and the judge declared a mistrial. After the first trial, several jurors were in favor of acquittal. Now the Justice Department says it will retry the two men on bribery, conspiracy, and fraud charges as soon as the judge in the case sets a new trial date. Menendez, a Democrat, saw his poll numbers sink during the trial and faces re-election for his Senate seat this year. For NPR News, I'm Joe Hernandez.
The Pentagon unveiled a new defense strategy today, shifting its focus from terrorism to countering the emerging power of Russia and China. NPR's Tom Bowman reports Defense Secretary Jim Mathis and the military's competitive edge has eroded, and it's necessary to build a more lethal and agile force.
Mathis said the U.S. still faces threats from terrorism, North Korea and Iran, but he made clear the Pentagon is looking elsewhere for its main concerns.
We face growing threats from revisionist powers as different as China and Russia are from each other. Nations that do seek to create a world consistent with their authoritarian models, pursuing veto authority over other nations' economic, diplomatic, and security decisions.
The strategy says a concern is that China and Russia are focusing on increasing their military power on the air, land, and sea. Officials say the new strategy will inform Pentagon budgets starting next year. Tom Bowman, NPR News, Washington.
The Supreme Court will decide the legality of the latest version of President Trump's travel ban on residents of 6 majority Muslim countries. Arguments will be heard this spring with a final ruling by late June. Wall Street higher by the closing bell, the Dow up 53 points, the Nasdaq up 40, S&P 500 up 12. This is NPR News from Washington.
You're listening to WNYC. I'm Jamie Floyd. As you've been hearing, New York's senior Senator Chuck Schumer says he and President Trump made some progress toward a compromise on the budget bill during a meeting this afternoon. But the minority leader told reporters the two of them still have a good number of disagreements. Trump phoned Schumer earlier today to invite him to the White House after Republicans in the Senate could not muster enough votes on their own to extend the current budget for another month to prevent the government shutdown that could begin as soon as midnight. Democrats insist the budget bill include provisions to renew DACA, which allows undocumented immigrants who arrived in the U.S. illegally as children to remain here. Many state lawmakers are dead set against Governor Cuomo's proposal to charge drivers for access to Manhattan's business district. They say it's just another tax that makes life more expensive. But others are trying to keep an open mind. Senator Brad Holloman says he wants to see how the proposal evolves and how congestion pricing would affect vulnerable people in his district.
I'm focused on ensuring that my constituents have a plan that works for them, in particular people with disabilities, low-income families, and seniors.
Holman says Cuomo's proposal could help reduce car traffic and increase money for mass transit improvements. He says those benefits would help people swallow the bitter pill of the new charges. We'll have team coverage of the governor's plan from our WNYC newsroom coming up after news headlines. And a data breach at testing company Questar has exposed personal information of about 52 students in schools around New York. State Education Commissioner Mary Ellen Elia says that a former employee is suspected of viewing student names and grade levels, but data such as test scores and social security numbers were not exposed. Affected students attended 5 schools around New York State. The Office of Attorney General Eric Schneiderman has opened an investigation. The company has a 5-year contract with New York to create new English and math tests for grades 3 through 8. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 33. Currently, it's 37 degrees in Central Park at 5:06.
Support for NPR comes from EBSCO, committed to an open library services environment. EBSCO Discovery Service integrates with any library's chosen integrated library system. Learn more at EBSCO.com.
It's All Things Considered. I'm Mary Louise Kelly in Washington.
And I'm Kelly McEvers in Culver City, California. Washington is preparing for a possible government shutdown tonight. Federal spending authority runs out at midnight. And while the House passed a short-term extension yesterday, for the moment it doesn't look like the Senate has the votes to do the same. President Trump canceled his plans to spend the weekend in Florida. Instead, he spent part of his afternoon meeting Democratic Senate leader Chuck Schumer. The two are said to have made some progress, but so far there's been no breakthrough, and there is plenty of political finger-pointing. NPR's Scott Horsley is with us now from the White House. Hey, Scott.
Hi.
So for the last 3.5 months, the government has been running on these short-term stopgap spending bills, and so far it hasn't led to a shutdown. What's different this time?
What has been different until now is the Democrats look to be dug in. They are insisting that any new spending bill include protection for those so-called dreamers, that is, the undocumented immigrants who were brought to the country as children. If you remember back in the fall, President Trump announced that he was going to unravel the protection that dreamers had received under former President Obama. And ever since then, the Democrats have been under pressure to put something in its place. Now, they're a minority in Congress, but Democrats do have some leverage in the Senate because Republicans there don't have the votes to pass a spending bill on their own. So, Democratic Senate Leader Chuck Schumer and his colleagues have been exercising that leverage. And White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney says if there is a shutdown, it's on them.
We don't want this. We do not want a shutdown. But if Mr. Schumer insists on it, he is in a position to force this on the American people.
Americans who they would blame if there's a government shutdown, and it seems as if there's plenty of blame to go around. But Republicans can't count on getting off scot-free because they do control the House, the Senate, and the White House.
Right. The last time there was a government shutdown, as I recall, Mick Mulvaney had a different position. Is that right?
That's right. Before he became White House Budget Director, Mulvaney was a conservative congressman from South Carolina and very much in the middle of the last government shutdown back in 2013. That shutdown came over Obamacare. It lasted more than 2 weeks. And Mulvaney says Republicans took a lot of short-term heat for that.
There's no other way to describe it, but the Obama administration weaponized the shutdown in 2013. They could have have made the shutdown in 2013 much less impactful, but they chose to make it worse. The only conclusion I can draw is they did so for political purposes.
Now, Mulvaney says he's trying to minimize the pain of any shutdown this time, although when reporters pressed him on what exactly would be different, the only example he could give is this time the national parks would stay open.
What about other government services?
Most essential services will continue, although there could be some fallout at places like the Centers for Disease Control, which is monitoring the spread of the flu. Mulvaney cautions even federal workers who stay on the job will take a temporary financial hit.
The military will still go to work. They will not get paid. Okay? The border will still be patrolled. They will not get paid. Folks will still be fighting the fires out west. They will not get paid.
Now, eventually, even those furloughed government workers would likely get back pay, but for people living paycheck to paycheck, this could be a hardship.
And all of this, of course, happens on the first anniversary of the president's inauguration, right?
That's right. According to Bloomberg, the president was supposed to attend a big anniversary celebration at Mar-a-Lago this weekend with supporters who'd paid $100,000 for the privilege of being there. Now it looks as if Trump won't be there, although the White House does say the president will continue on with his plans to go to Davos, Switzerland next week for the swanky World Economic Forum.
NPR's Scott Horsley, thanks a lot.
You bet.
All right, let's bring in the voice now of Colorado Senator Cory Gardner. He is a Republican, and he's been working on a bipartisan immigration bill that would help recipients of DACA, that program you just heard Scott Horsley talking about, that lets young people in the country illegally stay and work here, that lets young people who came into the country illegally stay and work here. Senator Gardner, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Where exactly have we reached you, if I can ask?
I'm in my office in Washington and talking to my colleagues about a way forward and how we can provide a solution to what is getting to be a very late hour.
Yeah, and you're there on Capitol Hill. What is the mood? Are you all going to get this done?
There is a sense of optimism. There's a sense of frustration, undoubtedly. But I think the American people, we owe it to them to bring a solution on funding to not shut the government down. There's too much at stake, too much collateral damage that can occur if funding does lapse this evening, while we also put ideas in front of our colleagues to address this issue of DACA, the children who are brought here at a very young age through no fault of their own. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Let's not shut the government down. Let's solve the DACA problem and make America proud of what we can actually accomplish.
Okay, you say you've got a responsibility to solve this. We have not interviewed anyone, and we've interviewed everybody we can on Capitol Hill. Nobody wants to see a shutdown. However, we're now looking at the clock. It's ticking away. We've got hours left. Let me put this to you. We spoke to your Democratic colleague, this is Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, yesterday. He was among those who told us he doesn't want to shut down, that Congress is really close to a more substantial spending bill that would cover immigration. I know you want that too. What is the stumbling block now? Can you put your finger on it?
I think we just have to find what people agree to, and the president made it very clear the four things that he would accept in a solution to address these children. The four things being what he calls chain migration, border security, fixing the DACA situation itself, as well as the diversity visa lottery. We don't have consensus yet broad enough to get this onto the president's desk in a way that would allow him to sign. So we have more work to do, but we do have time, and I think it's important to note these conversations continue.
How do you have time, though, if I may? We're hours away from midnight.
Oh, yeah, no, what I mean is we have time to fix this challenge. The president laid out a deadline in March. I'd like to see this done sooner rather than later, but the president has said you have until March to do this. We can do this, and that's what I mean. We have time. I don't think it's wise to shut the government down. I think we should get our work done, funding the government, not putting at risk our military communities and our men and women in uniform, and not putting at risk important programs at the CDC. Let's not do that.
You're talking about a short-term plan. We keep it open a few more days while y'all continue to negotiate.
That's correct. And, only in Washington sometimes does it seem like people who don't like what they believe is a bad idea come up with an even worse idea, which is an even shorter term funding solution. So let's not do that sort of infamous Washington two-step where they take one bad idea, replace it with a worse idea. Let's get together, Republicans and Democrats. I do think we can find common ground on this. There seems to be unanimity in finding a solution for dreamers. Let's do that, but let's not create the kind of collateral damage that a government shutdown, a lapse in funding would create.
You've said the president has been very clear about what he wants on immigration. Democrats and Republicans who we've interviewed this week might differ with that assessments, but let me put that to you directly. Is the president playing a helpful role in the negotiations negotiations at this hour.
I think most people who attended the meeting on Tuesday was just last week. A lot has occurred since then, where it was a sort of this live broadcast of about 20 members of the House and the Senate, Democrats and Republicans coming together, walked away with a pretty clear idea of what the president was hoping for, that 4-part plan that he expected in order to be able to sign it. Now,
there was also other meetings last week from which
there was. That's right. There certainly was. Made a little bit of
somewhat
news.
More chaos. Yeah.
And a little bit of news that was unfortunate, but I think what we have to do is not let that interfere with our ability to get the job done. We can't let politics get in the way of accomplishing something very important for our country. And we don't, when it comes to these kids, dreamers, we don't hold our children, we don't hold them accountable for the acts of their parents. We don't charge our 3-year-old kids with trespass for walking across their neighbor's lawn. So I believe we can find a solution on this. But I'm afraid if there's a lapse in funding, then it's going to pull for people further apart. So let's focus on a solution. And I don't think we're that far apart. And so let's not put something that could play politics